It was the first Saturday of October, and my boyfriend and I found ourselves at the entrance to Twilight Creek Farm's amazing corn maze. It was around 4 p.m., and the sun had begun to dip towards the horizon. The air had that crisp autumn chill, hinting at a cold night. A cardboard cutout stood at the entrance of a cartoony ear of corn, grinning widely. Yes, it was clear that the intended demographic for this maze was about 2 decades younger than us. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Tyler asked. "Come on, it'll be fun," I replied, grabbing a map from the anthropomorphized corn. Then I linked my arm with his, and the two of us walked into the maze. The corn rose up all around us, about 7 feet tall, maybe taller. Our feet sunk slightly into the muddy ground. In retrospect, it probably wasn't a great idea to go corn mazing after such a heavy rain. But whatever, we were here now. The corn quickly swallowed us up. Within a minute, I could no longer see the entrance. Just corn stretching in every direction, a dense forest choking out all else. As we rounded the bend, the path ended in a T. There was a metal sign, eroded at the edges, planted firmly in the muddy soil, featuring the cartoon corn again. Remember these tips to ensure a fun time at our amazing corn maze. First, shh! Don't tell secrets in the maze. The corn has ears. Second, don't stay in the maze after dark. Third, if you're under 13 years old, stay with your parent or caregiver at all times, please. And finally, remember, there are no mirrors in the corn maze. At the bottom of the sign, there were 2 arrows, and it read, "Easy Kids Maze, 20 mins. Challenging maze." "Can we just do the kids' maze?" Tyler asked. "It's kind of cold." "Yeah, but it's so lame," I replied, looking over the map. "It's like literally a straight line." He sighed. "Fine." So we turned right, following the path into the corn. Our footsteps squelched softly in the mud. "So no mirrors in the corn maze?" I asked, trying to start conversation. "What do you think that's supposed to mean?" He shrugged. "Maybe they want to make it clear it's not like one of those haunted funhouse things? Like if you see a path, it's real and not a reflection? I guess." As we walked down the path, an awkward silence fell over us. Okay, I'll admit it. I had an ulterior motive for this trip. Tyler and I had been fighting on and off all week. Just little things, here and there, sniping at each other. It was like something in the air had changed between us. Little things were annoying him and me constantly. Maybe it was the shorter days, the lack of sunlight getting to us. Maybe at almost a year of dating, we were finally coming out of the honeymoon phase. Whatever it was, I felt like a change of scenery would do us some good. Of course, I was starting to regret that now, with the chill creeping into the air and the mud sticking to my sneakers. We probably should have just postponed to next weekend, when it wasn't after a heavy rain. But I felt like I couldn't take one more minute in that apartment. Which way now? Tyler's voice jerked me out of my thoughts. I looked up. Ahead of us, the path split into 3, each path considerably narrower than the one we were on. I looked down at the map, but I didn't see any places where the path split in 3. I don't know. He raised an eyebrow at me. "We're lost already?" I looked down at the map again, scanning the schematic. The cartoony ear of corn smiled up at me from the paper, and I wanted to punch it in the face. "I don't see any places where it splits in 3, I said, handing him the map. "Huh," he said, looking over it. "Maybe that's part of the challenge. The map is wrong. That'd be kind of interesting. Don't they say, if you want to get out of a maze, stick to one side? Like keep your hand touching one wall?" He stretched his arm out and touched the corn on the right. "Yeah!" I followed him down the rightmost path. It suddenly seemed darker, probably because the path was only about half the width of the previous one, and we were deep in the shadows of the corn. Dry leaves brushed against my arms, feeling more like rough claws, raking against my skin. I felt the cold of the mud permeating through my shoes with each step. We passed an intersection, and for a split second, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw someone walking in the other direction. But when I turned my head, nothing was there. I started to Tyler. Then I shook my head. Never mind. Probably just my hair falling into my line of vision. Still, I was starting to really not like this. We made another right and another, following the wall. But we didn't find an exit. More layers of mud caked onto my shoes. I was so tired. "Maybe we should just turn around and go home," I called out behind him. He turned around, his eyes lighting up. Really? Yeah, should be easy enough to backtrack. We can follow our footprints. Sounds good to me, he replied. We turned around and began to follow our footprints back. But 15 or 20 minutes later, we still hadn't found the entrance. We haven't been here that long. We should be out by now. Are you sure we came this way? I called out, as I followed Tyler down a sharp right turn I didn't remember taking. Has to be, he replied, gesturing to our footprints. But when we turned the corner, we found not one set of our prints, but two. We were going in circles. This is ridiculous, Tyler huffed. Maybe we should call someone. I pulled out my phone and my heart dropped. It was 5:23 p.m., over an hour since we'd entered the maze. What? Tyler asked, seeing my face drop. I held up my phone. We haven't been here this long, have we? He paused for a second, then shook his head. We have to follow our footprints out. We'll get out eventually. And if we're really lost, we can call 911 or something. Okay, so which way? I asked. One set of footprints went down each path. Left. We were making all rights before, so it should be lefts to get out. We veered left. The corn seemed to squeeze in on us, the path growing narrower with each step. Like the field of corn was some kind of monster, ready to engulf us at any second. I shook my head and continued forward. There's nothing wrong here. We're just lost in a challenging maze, that's all. But when the path widened, I realized how wrong I was. We were standing in a clearing, about the size of my kitchen. There was a sign, the same battered thin metal as before, in the middle. I froze as I began to read. There are two ways out of this maze. You can either find the way out on your own, or you can choose to leave behind one person in your party, and the exit will make itself known to you. Either way, make sure you're out of the maze by nightfall, because then nobody makes it out. The cartoon corn man was painted on the bottom of the sign, grinning up at us. This time, there was a bit of rust or red paint around his mouth. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or not. My heart began to pound. I felt like I couldn't get enough air in my lungs, like a panic attack was about to start. Tyler burst into laughter behind me. What? They're trying so hard to make this like a scary arge or something, he said, laughing. So lame. I whipped around, arms crossed. You don't actually believe it, do you? All I know is we've been walking around this maze for an hour, but it's only felt like 20 minutes, and the map doesn't match the maze, and I don't remember parts of the maze that we've clearly been to because our footprints are there. I said all in one breath. I stared at him, panting, my heart pounding in my chest. Kate, I'm sorry, you're really scared, huh? And so are you. I saw how scared you looked when you realized we were going in circles, but now you're just going to pass it off and pretend it's all a game. Kate, I want to get out of here, I shouted. Whatever this is, game or not, I hate it, and I want to go home. Tyler put up his hands defensively. Whoa, okay, I'm sorry. Let's just keep going left. We'll get out, I promise. Huffing, I cut in front of him and veered down the left path, leading the way. My shoes squelched loudly. The path narrowed again, corn clawing at my shoulders and hips. We curved left and right, and then to my relief, the path opened up wider in front of us. We're out. The hope leaked out of me like a deflating balloon. The path did open up into a much larger area, a clearing like the last one, but I hadn't remembered seeing the clearing, despite footprints trailing all over it. Our footprints, crisscrossing, frantic, some clearly made by us running, the depressions in the mud deep and smudged. I turned around. No, Tyler wasn't behind me. My legs went weak underneath me. Tyler, I shouted. The path curved behind me, disappearing into the darkness. No sign of Tyler. I scanned the corn surrounding the clearing, but it was dark and shadowy and infinite, stretching in every direction. Tyler! The corn rustled, somewhere to my left. I glanced over, but I couldn't see anything. The corn was too dense, the shadows too dark. The sky was darkening now, threatening dusk. It was nearly pitch black in the shadows of the cornfield. I stared at the mess of footprints on the ground. What the hell is going on? I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. It rang several times, then voicemail picked up. Fuck. I called him a second time and a third. He didn't pick up. For a while I just stood there, calling his name. The sky deepened to dark blue above me. The corn rustled in the breeze, stretching in every direction. Birds soared to their nests, chirping. Then the chittering of bats overhead filled the silence. There were two paths at either end of the clearing, one curving left, one curving right. No, they were pitch black, like looking into the deepest of forests, choking out every last bit of light. I turned on my phone's flashlight and swept it down the entrance of each, but nothing appeared to be there. Just stalks and stalks of corn, all lines and shadows overlapping each other. And then finally, I heard something. Somewhere down the left path from just out of my view, I heard a soft whimpering sound. "Tyler?" A rough whisper. "Kate?" I approached the path, my heart pounding in my ears. I held the phone out in front of me, lighting up the path. "Tyler?" I whispered. And then I saw the blood, the patch of wet and dark mingling with the mud. I swept my flashlight over the corn. The beam of light fell on a bloody hand, lying in the mud just a few feet within the corn. I jerked the flashlight back, revealing an arm and then Tyler's face. He was so pale. His eyes were wide. His cheeks were smeared with blood. "Kate," he groaned, a horrible gurgling sound mingling with his voice. "I'm coming. I'm gonna get you out of there." I tried to force my way through the corn, but it was impossible. They were planted only 6 inches, maybe a foot apart. I didn't have the strength to bend or snap them. "Tyler, what happened?" He didn't get the chance to tell me. I watched in horror as his body began to slide backwards through the corn, as if something was dragging him. "Tyler!" I screamed. The sound of corn stalks snapping filled the air. I frantically shone my flashlight into the corn, sweeping it in every direction. But all I saw was more and more corn, everywhere, filling up every square inch of space. I ran back through the clearing, back down one of the paths, pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "My boyfriend and I are in a corn maze, and he's hurt. I think there might be someone out there and—" "Slow down, please," the woman said. "You said you're at a corn maze?" Her tone sounded skeptical. "Yeah. Where?" "Twilight Creek Farms." A beat of silence. "Do you know what the punishment is for calling emergency services when there is no emergency?" she asked, her voice sharp. "What?" "Prank calls can put you in jail for a year. Did you know that?" I stared at the corn, my throat closing. "What? This isn't a prank call. My boyfriend is really hurt. I think someone—" "Ma'am," she cut off. "Twilight Creek Farms has been closed for 3 months now, ever since the bodies were found." All the air sucked out of my lungs. "Bee bodies?" I croaked. "We've gotten over 24 calls since then, claiming that someone's in trouble," she replied condescendingly. "But the entire farm was razed, since they lost all their money in the wrongful death suit. So what kind of game are you trying to play?" I trailed off. Three months? Uh-huh. What month is it?" A scoff. "January." The phone fell from my hands. This can't be real. I must be dreaming. I wheeled around, the white of my phone's flashlight sweeping over the corn. The path curved away into darkness, deeper into the corn. I snatched my phone off the ground and walked back towards the clearing. But it wasn't there. Like the corn had swallowed it up, grown in its place in the span of minutes. What the fuck is going on here? The sound of footsteps jerked me out of my daze. Squelch, getting louder, coming closer. Squelch. I turned the flashlight off and began running in a random direction. I took every left turn, keeping against the left wall of corn, praying I would find an exit. I tried calling 911 again and again, but no one ever picked up. They must have flagged my number as some sort of prank call. The farm has to have some safety system in place. They let kids come here. They have to search the maze before they close up for the night. They wouldn't just let people die here. I stopped to catch my breath. My lungs burned. I couldn't run anymore. I just couldn't. I stood halfway bent over in the middle of a narrow path, the corn impossibly close, sucking in lungful after lungful of icy air. "Kate," Tyler's voice. Incredibly quiet, barely a whisper, from somewhere in front of me. I began running blindly towards him. The path zigzagged left, then right, and then I saw him. Tyler was standing at the end of the path, facing away from me. His form illuminated in silver moonlight, the shadows of the corn crisscrossing over his back. "Tyler," I whispered. I ran towards him. But halfway there, I stopped. Something is wrong. He wasn't turning around to look at me, wasn't moving at all. "Tyler?" Nothing. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Hands shaking, I lifted it up. No. It was wearing his clothes, but it wasn't him. It was a scarecrow. Hay poked out of the neckline of his shirt, out of the cuffs of his jeans. His hands were just bunches of hay, girdled with twine. Stray pieces of hay scattered the ground, falling out of his hiking boots. But wait, that didn't quite make sense, because he had hair. Undeniably his hair, wavy and black. The gears in my brain spun, trying to figure out what exactly was going on, trying to interpret this thing standing in front of me, stuffed with hay, with his clothes, his hair, and then I realized it. The body was a scarecrow, but the head was not. I could see Tyler's pale ears, the blood dripping onto the hay of his neck. I opened my mouth to scream. The corn stalks rustled and snapped, shaking violently as something moved within them. And then it emerged, a scarecrow, moving in jerky, stilted movements towards me, holding a long silver blade dripping with blood, missing a head. I took off down the path, my feet pounded underneath me, my lungs burned. I tried to keep right, because I'd been going left the other way. Did that even make sense? But everything blurred and smeared in my mind. All I saw was corn, endless rows of it, lit by the moonlight. Pitch black shadows underneath it, a silver moon hanging overhead, bats twirling and tilting through the air. After what felt like hours of running, I finally accepted my fate. I'm never getting out of here, and neither is Tyler. Somehow, I evaded the scarecrow all night. Before I knew it, the sun was rising. I thought I'd finally found salvation when I heard voices on the other side of the corn. But then I realized what they were saying. "Are you sure you want to do this? Come on, it'll be fun." It was our voices. I screamed until I was hoarse, telling them, us, to stay away. I screamed for help. I tried everything. I clawed my way through the corn towards where I'd heard them, because clearly they were at the entrance. But all I found was more and more corn. It was futile. At one point, I think I broke through for just an instant, but then I watched her shake her head and say, "Never mind." Time passes strangely here, with all our days in the cornfield overlapping each other. Rows upon rows of our footprints cross the dirt from an eternity of running from the scarecrow. Every time I try to stop Tyler from getting taken, and every time I fail. And then there's always the night. I spend every night evading the headless scarecrow. I know my own fate. I know it was bodies, not a body, that was found at the cornfield. I know I don't make it out alive, but I evade her anyway, hiding in the corn, deluding myself that if I stay alive long enough, maybe I will get out. I'm sure it's been more than 3 months now, but the moon rises all the same, hanging silver over the corn. The stalks rustle and snap. I hide in the corn, my breathing fast and heavy, praying that one day I will find a way out. I know that day will never come.